This astaxanthin supplement, I hear it's 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, 100 times stronger than vitamin E, and 800 times stronger than CoQ10?
Yes, astaxanthin supports joint health, memory health, even anti-aging and immune health. This Hawaii brand delivers 3 times more nature-identical astaxanthin to your body and is a better buy than the competition. It's called Xanthicin. Safely manage your inflammatory health with Xanthicin. It's pure and highly absorbed, providing greater benefits. Visit getxantho.com and these retailers.
All right, episode 11. We are steaming our way through the double digits here on Hawai'i Football Now, presented by Xanthicin. Mahalo also to Spectrum Mobile, our other sponsor, as we kind of find our stride here late in the season. Jordan Helle back with Hunter Hughes to recap bitter defeat here to San Diego State last week. We'll get you ready for the Bows trip to Las Vegas coming up this weekend as well. Hunter, opening drive, I'll kind of just start with this question. Are you more of a glass half full or glass half empty kind of guy?
In life in general, Jordan, I am definitely a glass half full person. I have run out of water with the University of Hawaii football team right now. And I'm someone who can conjure water for my cup. And I'm having a hard time being optimistic really for any of it. If there's one lone thing, the turnaround of our defense from the beginning of the year until now is absolutely apparent. Our guys play inspiring football. That warrior ethos is felt. For me as a former player, as a fan, those guys play their hearts out every time they go out there. But offensively, my side of the ball, Jordan, it's been rough to say the least.
Yeah, and so that'll kind of lead us down the path. I think there are some very good, and then there are some very bad. So since you're typically a glass half full kind of guy, I would kind of throw myself in that category as well. We'll start with the good because there is a lot to get to in the bad, and I think that's going to generate most of the discussion here. Yeah. But Hawaii loses 17-10 against San Diego State. First time full capacity eligible crowd, about maybe 60% full or so, really, when you break it down. The game ends on the San Diego State 18-yard line as time expires. A completion from Chevin Cordero to Dedrick Parson, tackled inbounds, clock runs. They can't get the next step off. That's something we'll get to as well. Hawaii now 4-6 overall and 1-4 in the Mountain West. They are going to need to win their final 3 games to secure bowl eligibility. So we'll touch on the good. We'll start at least on a high note here. And Hunter, I do think that defense, right? They hold San Diego State to 17 points. That's 11 below the Aztecs average. It isn't a high flying offense, but a team that had been ranked in the national rankings. They are again ranked in the college football playoff rankings, which came out earlier this evening as we record this on Tuesday night. But they're a team that kind of controls the ball. Hawaii held them to below their average, held San Diego State to just 227 yards of total offense. 227. That's 99 yards below their average. They only ran for 128 yards, which is decent showing, but that's 65 below what usually San Diego State puts out there. They held the Aztecs to 99 passing yards. 99. They give it about 100 yards passing to this San Diego State team. They did force one turnover, which, maybe a little lower than their average, but did set up a very short field, led to the lone Hawaii touchdown, that one-play 19-yard drive on a strike from Chevin Cordero to Calvin Turner. Hawaii's defense is number 4 in the country in total takeaways. Number 4 in the country. And look, they had that 6-turnover performance against Fresno State. We get that, but still, they're ranked. They're in the top 5 in the country in terms of takeaways. They still have a negative turnover differential, so we can get to that in the bad portion of this podcast, if you will. But Hunter, the defense you talked about, right? They were getting run over early in the season from quality opponents. And this San Diego State team, I would include in that category. Look, they're nationally ranked. They're in first place in the Mountain West Division after Fresno's loss last week to Boise. And so for this defense to play this well after the Utah State game, where I thought they took a step back, but really the body of work over the last 5, I think has been pretty darn good. And it's a big reason why they've even had a chance to win some of these games late with the offensive ineptitude.
Yeah, no, I think if you're going to hold a nationally ranked opponent to 17 points, anytime, that is a phenomenal job by your defense, let alone in the Mountain West, where we're known for scoring a little bit more every single time we put on the helmet. No matter what team you play in the Mountain West, we're going to score points. And so you can't get it done, Jordan, if you're only scoring 7 points. It's just not going to happen. I mean, 10 obviously with the field goal too, but I'm more including just touchdowns. We have got to improve. We have to improve our play calling. We have to improve our execution. I think you bring up a really good point right there. I mean, are we -5 still with the turnover margin for the year?
I think it's -3 now.
-3. Okay.
That's the other thing, right? And you'll kind of see a pattern as we go through this. Every positive for the University of Hawaii, there is nearly a mirror negative on the other end. Hawaii is 108th in terms of turnovers. Oh, excuse me. They're last in the country in terms of turnovers.
That is my feeling for the team too, is for every step forward, it feels like 2 giant steps back. Mirrored with the whole roller coaster that has been getting fans in attendance, 1 small step forward, a few steps back. I will say, though, that is definitely one positive from this last weekend as well, was having a somewhat full capacity feeling on campus. The student fan section was rabid. I mean, they were lit the entire game, exploding for field goals, first downs, fumble recoveries. I mean, it was a fun environment. I hope it's only going to go up from here. Friends of season ticket holders, I hope, talk to other season ticket holders and we're like, hey, it was a very safe environment. Come on down and show the guys love, because it's special on campus at the Ching Athletic Complex. I have to mention that, Jordan, because it was a really unique experience for the first time.
No, I think that is definitely belonging in the category of big time positives from this past weekend, right? And for a group that, the students who don't no longer have to drive all the way out to Halava, and now they can just get down there, right? You were there in person, right, Hunter?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, and so I'm watching at home, and it came through. Like I really thought some of that atmosphere came through the television broadcast and seeing the student section. I know some of the other teams, the men's basketball team included, were down there, right? Kind of playing up the student section and feeding off of that crowd. And obviously they get their season started this week here with the Rainbow Classic at home. But I think that is a very real thing, right? And especially, look, I know it was a little awkward, right? Because a lot of the season tickets were refunded or either rolled over to next season when it was very unknown whether or not they were going to be able to host fans this year. And so you were faced with a situation where everybody just had to buy single game tickets to come in here, right? It's a little different than the season ticket holders that, number in the teens of thousands that you would expect to be there every week. And there are other factors, no doubt about that. So I do think that you can count on a lot of those season ticket holders coming back when the time comes, when things open up a little more fully, when, you are much more sure of having home games. But I think the one thing that you want to keep growing, and I think will grow organically, is the student section. And I think that, those kids who were in attendance, who get to go back, right, and talk to their friends, and the word spreads like, hey man, this is the best party on a Saturday night. We got to get down there. And if the team continues to improve, that obviously helps the cause. When you can buy more refreshment than just water, that'll help the cause, if you know what I mean. So I think that is a heck of a start for having all of the hurdles that everybody had to go through, including the students. Once you get some of those things taken out of the equation, and it is much easier and much more full of a game day experience. Like, I do think that is something they can really build on, and you can really get a large student section there, right? I mean, you went to the school, you know what that's like, and so you know, from your perspective, walking around down on the field, did you get a similar impression?
Oh, night and day from 2-3 years ago when we were in Aloha Stadium. It took a lot of effort from the team and by University of Hawaii, programming staff to get the students into the stadium. For those that, have been around the program for any length of time, know that the tailgate experience outside of Aloha Stadium is lit. Everybody's having a phenomenal time. The problem is not getting them to the stadium. It's actually getting them in the stadium. So the fact that there's kind of this intimate environment on campus now, though, yeah, we may not be able to have a student section for 5,000 people, but it seemed like everybody that was there, like there wasn't an open seat in the student section. And I mean, I saw people dangling off the sides. They were loving being down on campus. I think a little bit of that has to do with just being excited that we've got live sports again. People are just hungry for that in general, I think. Yeah, like I got to talk with a couple of players afterwards. They said they first got to see it for pregame warmups out there, and it just they said they just kept coming and coming and coming. And from their perspective, with some social distancing on the main bleachers underneath the press box and things like that, it looked like, if not 100%, maybe like 85% capacity. It was a full stadium. It was a lot of fun. And with that came louder cheers, more involvement with different programming on the field. I will say one thing for those people that weren't there. Whoever is the MC on the music needs to coordinate with the band a little bit more. They were throwing great tunes out there, some oldies too, but at the same time playing it while the band was trying to do what they were doing. So you'd have band over here playing our fight song, and then you got Welcome to the Jungle playing over here at a very, very loud new stadium speaker system to our right. So still working out the kinks there a little bit, but it was a great environment, Jordan. And don't want to jump the gun at all, but it felt like we were going to come back in this game. Like it had it in the writing. Felt like it was written in stone for us. We kicked a field goal, had a phenomenal stop on defense, got the ball back with, I think it was like just shy of a minute whenever we got the ball back, and weren't that deep. I think we were maybe on our 35, 40 yard line. We could have done it. And to see how that game ended, man, you felt the air just leave the stadium. It was so disappointing not to throw a ball into the end zone and give it an effort. I mean, I was mind boggled, bro. I did not know what to do.
Yeah, it was a bit of an anticlimactic ending right down there in Hawaii, who ends up stalling out at the 18-yard line, right? And so this is a group, right? And that kind of leads us, I think, a nice little segue into some of the negatives that come out of this, or at least some of the frustrating and frustration-inducing elements of this game, and I think some trends throughout the season. One other note that I did have sort of in the positive column, Matt Shipley hits his lone field goal attempt. It was from 22 yards, sure, but he's 12 of 13 on the season in terms of kicking field goals. He's hit 11 in a row. But that also kind of will lead us to some of the negatives on special teams in just a little bit. But offensively, Hunter, you pointed it out, right? And they've had a few games now where the offense just has not been able to get much mustard at all, including 3 crucial Mountain West games against the top 3 in the West Division, or 3 of the 4 in the top of the West Division, the Fresno State game being the outlier. But, a tough home showing against San Jose State to open conference. Sure, 2 explosive touchdown runs by Helle Hunter, but that was about it against Nevada on the road. And then this 10-point performance against San Diego State. So 3 of your 5 conference games, that's scoring less than 20 points. Hawaii only had 260 yards of total offense. That's 140 below their average. They threw for 175 yards. Chevan Cordero, 19 of 34. They only ran it for 85 yards. This is a team that had multiple games were running it over 200 yards. And you can say maybe a different type of opponent or whatnot. But Dedrick Parson, after a nice stretch, particularly filling in for Helle Hunter, again, no Helle this game, but this is the second straight game he's been held to less than 55 yards. He's only got 81 total yards on the ground the last 2 games, although he does have a combined like 12 catches over the last 2 games. Had 5 more on Saturday night. Calvin Turner kind of held in check the whole game, 6 catches, 10 runs, not quite 60 yards total offense, did have the 1 19-yard touchdown catch. And nobody else really got going in the receiving game. The only guys who ran the ball were Parson, Turner, and Chevan. And then receiving wise, nobody had more than 3 catches. Nobody had more than 32 yards. It was lackluster, a bit anemic offensively. And then some of their best drives either stall out and lead to a field goal. And then honestly, their best drive may have been that last drive that got them down in a position where, arguably they could have probably taken 4 shots at the end zone. That ends up with no shots at the end zone. A couple of throws short of the chains. One leads to getting out of bounds. The other ultimately is the last play of the game where Dedrick Parsons gets tackled in bounds. And that also kind of leads to another aspect where clock management hasn't been great with this team on 4th downs. And again here. And so that's, I think, a combination, right, of coaching. You're going to want a lot more from Cordero in that moment. I don't know what he was processing, if he thought that Parson could either get out of bounds or at least get the first down to stop the clock momentarily, or he could have broke something, never took a shot at the end zone. But kind of a small snippet of what has been a bigger issue for this offense, I would say, Hunter.
Yes. The stat that you brought up of less than 21 points in the last few games or something like that, if you do the math, that's less than 1 score a quarter. That's not okay. That is not okay, especially coming from the run and shoot where it felt like we could score at will again. We were bringing back the days of the run and shoot, the glory days of the Colt Brennan, June Jones era. Obviously, we didn't have the record like those guys, but it felt like that again. 500 yards in the air, a couple hundred on the ground. We were working it as an offense under the previous regime. Just some thoughts being down on the sideline. I am down there. There's a handful of ex-players that are down there too, and just picking their brain, not trying to throw shade at our team right now, our coaching staff, because so much work goes into preparing week in, week out for different Division I opponents. You have to do so much research, so much planning, and then try and execute on that plan. So there's a lot on these guys' plate. I want to put that out there before anything else. But quite simply, you look at matchups whenever you are an offensive play caller. And one of the first things that anybody could have seen was, hey, that number 84, Nick Martiner, he's an awful lot taller than the DBs on San Diego State. Can't we just, from a physicality standpoint, throw it higher than the other team and get a catch? And the answer is yes. On the second to last drive, whenever we went down and kicked a field goal, Nick Martiner was 7 feet from me, just on the other side of the sideline. And the guy that was playing man cover at home, that's square up right in front of him. He doesn't have a zone responsibility. His responsibility is Nick Martiner. All you have to do is throw the ball 8-9 feet up in the air, and Nick is coming down with that football, and we're scoring. We didn't call it one time. I don't know if they don't know to call it. They don't have the courage to call it. Really, it just seems like elementary to me. Like, you don't even need to call the play. Just signal as a QB, signal over to your guy, hey, it was this. It was a little shaka, a little fade route, and I'm going to throw it high to you. Little things like that where when you don't see the effort, let alone the execution I can deal with because a lot of stuff happens in football on both sides of the ball. But when there isn't an effort for logical things like that, this coaching staff, which has been known to have sort of a my way or the highway sort of mantra in the way that they run things. It's very contrary to how we have been used to playing football at University of Hawaii. When you're not producing, your way is not looking too good anymore. And I feel like, Jordan, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm being pretty fair and political here. That's just what we've seen in the last few weeks. And when you're not able to count on 200 yards plus rushing, which we haven't in the last couple of games, our offense does not have another answer if our running backs don't go off. That's kind of all that we've had.
Yeah, that has been the fulcrum, right? If they run the football, they're in games. If they don't, then they're playing catch up, and this offense really isn't clicking. And
hoping for a miracle.
Yeah, and it's an offense that has been wildly inconsistent at that as well. And even the last couple of weeks, and I know no Day Hunter, that's obviously a big loss. But it seems like they have shifted a little bit more to being pass-centric as opposed to when we saw Braden Shager in there as the quarterback filling in for an injured Chevin Cordero. And so it just got me thinking, right? Because, look, we've heard, whether you see it on social media, whether you listen to the fans' voice after UH football games are completed, like it's fairly obvious, right? The frustration with this offense in particular, and in Bo Graham, the offensive coordinator. And I think you're maybe hearing a little bit of that with the play they're getting from the quarterback position as well, with Shager's inconsistency. And then obviously now with Chevin Cordero, a guy you expect much more from with his experience. And so one thing that a couple of things that Todd Graham coach teams have always done, they've taken the football away defensively. They're still doing that, right? They're still doing that here in this 2021 edition of Hawai'i football. And they've scored a lot of points. They've been tempo, high-scoring teams. Like, you look at all of his stops, Rice, Tulsa. The 1 year at Pitt maybe was a little bit of a blip where the scoring went down a bit. And then at Arizona State. And so I wanted to look it up, because the other thing that he has done is identified offensive play calling talent. His offensive coordinators, well, I guess I should preface it with this. In his 12 seasons prior to this one, so including last year as the head coach at Hawaii, 9 of those 12 years, his teams have averaged at least 30 points. 9 of those 12 years. They've finished 44th or better in the nation in terms of total scoring 11 of those 12 years. The only year they weren't in the top 44 was that Pitt year in 2011. They finished 83rd in the nation. Last year, Hawaii averaged 26.2 points per game. That's 85th in the country. This year, they're averaging 27.3, but that's 76th in the nation. That's bottom half in 130-team FBS division. And now, if you want to kind of break down the numbers a little bit more, if you exclude the Portland State and 2 New Mexico State games, they're averaging 19.3. So that's a little bit down as well. But his coordinator at Rice, Major Applewhite, becomes the D1 head coach at Houston. He had Gus Malzahn. He plucked Gus Malzahn basically out of high school. He had Chad Morris at Tulsa, who ends up going to Clemson as an offensive coordinator, ended up being the head coach at SMU, and later on at Arkansas. He wasn't as successful as a head coach, but boy, he could score some points. Yeah. And then he identified Mike Norvell at Pitt, took him over to Arizona State. Mike Norvell, now the head coach at Florida State, right? Those high-flying offenses when he was the head coach at Memphis. And then his last 2 offensive coordinators at Arizona State in 2016, it was Chip Lindsey, who is now the head coach at Troy. And they have had a pretty successful run under him in the Sun Belt. And then Billy Napier was his last head coach at Arizona State. And every single year at Arizona State, the lowest he scored was 31.9 points. Billy Napier, by the way, is the head coach now at Louisiana Lafayette. And what they are doing, the Raging Cajuns, right? They're kind of always on the precipice of being ranked and doing a lot of things. And so those are the hallmarks of Todd Graham coach teams. Defenses that take the football away, offenses that score a lot of points. And one thing that he has done very, very well in his head coaching tenure is identify offensive play calling talent. And so look, when you hire your son to be the offensive coordinator, that kind of just comes with the territory, right? It's going to come with a little more criticism. You can talk about nepotism. You can talk about all those other things that come with it. It is what it is, right? And so something's not working, right? Either he is no longer identifying offensive play calling talent like he did prior to coming to the University of Hawaii. G.J. Kinney, right, was the offensive coordinator last year. He was hired away to go be on Gus Malzahn's staff over at UCF. It's Bo Graham this year, first time ever calling plays at this level. It hasn't worked out, right? So it's something's awry, whether it's the play caller, whether it's the quarterback fitting the system, whether it's the quarterback executing what's out there, whether it's a personnel thing. I think you could have a pretty serious conversation of whether or not Chevan Cordero fits in this system. But I think around that, in terms of offensive skill talent, it's a pretty talented group. And so you just look at some of these numbers, right? And it's a legitimate conversation, I think, that people can have. I think that Todd Graham's got to have with his staff, with himself, right? Because at the end of the day, he is a defensive coach who is getting some pretty good production out of his defense that is also used to having an offense pair up with that. I mean, there were times where he was top 10 in the cut. At Tulsa, he averaged 41 points a game that 2010 year where they came and kicked Hawaii's butt in the Hawaii Bowl. And so it's got to be frustrating for him, right? Whoever you want to point the finger at, like I can only imagine for Todd Graham, he knows, right? He knows that this is not working for whatever reason, and it's got to get fixed. And I got to imagine he is frustrated beyond belief because this is not what he's used to on his teams that he coaches.
No.
And so I guess just to kind of throw those numbers out there, kind of do what you will with them, but kind of curious what your take is, Hunter, kind of looking over those numbers and just trying to figure out, look, what's the recipe to fix this?
Yeah, it's hard in football to be just blatant and say it's this one thing. It's Fair. The offensive coordinator, it's the quarterback, it's the offensive line, because it's a team sport. There's so much going on to produce that final that final execution on the field, that final product. I'm immediately thinking back to some of the years that I was under, in the Chow era. He brought in Jordan Wynn from Utah, a phenomenal college quarterback, and he was trying to bring him in as an offensive play caller. Jordan was the offensive coordinator for the first year that I was there, and actually was the one that gave me my shot as a walk-on. So I got nothing but love for Coach Jordan Wynn. But, after that year, when we didn't have a very good year offensively, they used Jordan, who was a young coach at the time, just a few years older than I was, as kind of a scapegoat. And the reason for some of their lackluster ability on offense, I mean, he was canned shortly after the season. So I'm interested to see, this year, more than the COVID year. I think everyone gets a pass for COVID, but Coach Graham was really benefiting from being kind of insulated. The program was insulated. The media really wasn't able to find out what was going on with the program to deliver on it. Last year when me and Mark Veneri were hosting our podcast, it was hard for us to figure out what was going on too, just because of the closed doorness of COVID. And so we're no longer in that time, not only with visibility on the team, fans are welcome back now. And we're really observing Coach Graham's perspective on how to run a football team. And first and foremost, he is a faith-first person. He's trying to reinvent what it means to be a Hawaii football player, which, I tip my cap for his courage. But there's a certain way of how we do things out here that, as a haole from the mainland, speaking as one, you need to tread very carefully whenever you go about doing something like that, because it's a special thing to play and coach in Hawaii. And if you don't put on the listening hat before the speaking hat out here, it's going to be very hard to live and work out here in Hawaii. You need to have a very humble spirit. which I'm trying to really stay unbiased because I haven't met Coach Graham yet in person, but it's just so different and so contrary to how we are seeing things happen with our football program that I have to look at that too from a cultural perspective on how he's running the team, because I think that plays a part here. When we were so successful not that long ago with a lot of the same pieces are still here. So I can't really point the finger other than something's going on upstairs in that coaching staff that isn't really utilizing our skill sets to the best of their abilities.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, right? He is used to winning. His track record proves that. I will amend earlier. It was actually 9 of his 12 years prior to coming to UH that his teams, averaged over 30 points. So that didn't include this 2020 year last year. But the dude's gone to bowl games in 11 of his 13 years prior to this as a head coach. And so the resume speaks for itself. But in the current iteration of this 2021 football program, I think there are fair questions to be asked of where they are currently at and where they are currently going to close out the final 3 games of this season. And so we'll take a little delayed halftime break here, come back and get you all ready for this trip to Vegas coming up, as well as all of a sudden it turns into the showdown for the Island Showdown trophy between a pair of teams that are 1-4 all of a sudden in the Mountain West Conference. But before we take that break, we also want to remind everybody to make sure, if you haven't already, to look into this amazing supplement called astaxanthin. That's right. Learn more at getxantho.com. Doctors and pharmacists recommend astaxanthin for just about everything from joint and muscle function to cholesterol health and cognitive function, anti-aging qualities to it. And only one brand delivers 3 times more astaxanthin to your body, making it a better buy than any of the competition. You can get astaxanthin at xantho.com, Newtown Square Pharmacy, Down to Earth, Kaka'ako, and Pharmacare Hawaii as well. Again, that's astaxanthin. You can get it at xantho.com. Halftime break. We'll be back. Second half coming up here on Hawai'i Football Now.
This is Hawai'i Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, second halftime here on Hawai'i Football Now. Jordan Hunter back with you. Hawaii hitting the road to the Ninth Island as they will take on UNLV for the Island Showdown trophy. Hawaii needing to go 3-0 the rest of the way. That's the position they put themselves in at 4-6 and just 1-4 in the Mountain West Conference. They've got UNLV this Saturday. They come home for the final home game at senior night against Colorado State in a couple of weeks, and then they finish up the regular season with a road trip to Laramie, Wyoming on the 27th to take on the Cowboys there in the Paniolo Trophy showdown. UNLV, they have been very good. 1-8 so far this season. That is the first win for Marcus Arroyo, their head coach, since he took over the program. Very similar sort of transit, I guess only in the sense that this is his second year, much like Todd Graham. Hawaii obviously had a much higher trajectory at the time of the coaching change as opposed to UNLV, which has been trending downward. 1-8 this season, 1-4 in the Mountain West, as I mentioned, identical records in conference to the University of Hawaii. Picked up their very first win last week, 31-17 at New Mexico, gave Coach Arroyo his first win. All kinds of Hawaii connections, as there always are, including their starting quarterback, the true freshman, Cameron Friel. He is a Kailua graduate, spent some time actually at St. Louis school, so there's no surprise there that this guy's got a little St. Louis schooling. He is incredibly athletic. He is big. He is strong. He's got a great arm. Threw for 227 yards last week against the Lobos, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. They have come close on a number of occasions to pulling out that first win, finally got it done in Albuquerque. Charles Williams is the active leader in career rushing yards in the FBS. He had 74 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns last week. And then there's Kyle Williams, who is super dynamic, kind of Calvin Turner-esque. He had 7 catches, 137 yards, and a touchdown last week. Their numbers won't stick out to you at all. They don't score a lot of points. They don't put up a lot of yardage, but they are a team that seemingly is getting a little bit better and has been knocking on the door. And so it's kind of curious, Hunter. I don't know if how does it change the fact that they picked up their first win last week? This could have been a situation where they are hungrier than ever trying to get that first win against Hawaii, but they're also coming off a win and maybe buoyed with even more confidence now that they've gotten that thing out of the way as they take on the Bulls.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an element there. It's always hard to play a team at home, no matter who you're playing. That has to be said. But, man, even just looking at where we stand in the Mountain West and who we still have remaining on our schedule, we are in a very similar boat as the remaining 3 teams on our schedule. We are on the bottom drawer of the Mountain West right now, and everything is on us to prove if we belong there or not. It like everything is on our side of the court to determine if we belong in a bowl game or not. It's out there. Yeah, the last game of the year against Wyoming is going to be a tough test in the cold, in the elements. But at the same time, we've shown moments of greatness this year, and it really just comes down to, are we going to be able to put it together and catch lightning in a bottle, which seems to kind of be the strategy for us as a team, definitely as an offense. Try to catch lightning in a bottle and see what happens when we need to. So, this week, I know the guys are juiced to play at Allegiant at the new stadium for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm super jealous. That stadium looks epic. The Death Star. I think Vegas, UNLV is going to, they're definitely going to try to ride a little bit of momentum. I'm excited to see what happens, Jordan.
Yeah, the opportunity to play there, right? Sam Boyd, longtime home of the Rebels. They transition out of that stadium. There's been a lot of money pumped.
Ugly field too, by the way. Sorry to butt in.
No.
They had the ugliest field, in my opinion, of anyone out there. They put like diamonds and spades and hearts next to the numbers to make it feel
like a blackjack table, right?
Yeah, exactly. I get what they were trying to do. That thing was ugly, man. Oh, just being out there, it kind of gave you a headache to look at. Way worse than the blue field of Boise. Just had to throw that in there.
No. I've been to Sam Boyd a few times, been to a few UNLV games there at Sam Boyd. And so, yeah, you bring up this beautiful cathedral of a football stadium, right? That is Allegiant. There's been a lot of money pumped into this UNLV football program, not necessarily for that stadium. That's the Raiders stadium, but for their on-campus practice facilities, everything else around that football program. And so there is some financial backing to help bring this team out of the doldrums of the Mountain West Conference. But one thing that you can always usually count on when Hawaii is in town is a good sizable fan base, right? And I got to imagine again that there are going to be a lot of Hawaii fans there. And so what is that like going on the road and often having a bit of a home field advantage in Las Vegas when it comes to the fan support?
Yeah, it's definitely a unique experience because it is the closest thing to an away home game that Hawaii has. We have so many fans from Hawaii, not even from Hawaii, but root for Hawaii just because of the Vegas connection right there. We see more green in stands at UNLV than any other game, other than maybe a BYU game, just because we love to play against those guys. But it's definitely an interesting environment. It's not like a typical other away game. We take a lot of ownership in beating UNLV. It's not an off game, and we need to approach it that way too, especially when they're kind of subpar. And I've talked about it earlier in the year. True listeners of the show will remember this. Whenever we play against subpar teams, I brought this up whenever we were playing New Mexico State, we tend to let off the gas when I don't think we should have. And so that is always the risk whenever you go in and playing a team that has nothing to lose, is to shift down and play to their potential instead of rising up and playing like a I said it earlier in the year, a championship caliber team. We know that's probably not the case this season for UH.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup. Hawaii holds that Island Showdown trophy. UNLV has the advantage in the all-time series and games played in Las Vegas, 9-6 overall. But the home team has won 10 of the last 12 matchups in this series. Of course, Hawaii winning in 2019 on their way to the Mountain West Conference Championship game. And a note from our guy, Keegan Ota, our crack producer on this podcast, puts in all the hard work. First Hawaii game in a current NFL stadium since 2009. When the Bows went to Seattle and beat Washington State, actually, in what was then Quest Field. Now Lumen Field has gone through a couple of different changes, but the Seahawks stadium. So always pretty cool when you can go ahead and get your team an opportunity to play in an NFL stadium. Again, that game is coming up 11 o'clock Hawaii time against UNLV. Make sure to tune in, listen up to Bobby, John, and the crew as they get you all the action from the Ninth Island. All right, so we'll transition things into overtime as we wrap up another edition here on Hawai'i Football Now. Hunter, I'll give you the tidbit you got for us as a little extra to close this out.
So I don't know who all got to catch Monday Night Football or out here in Hawaii Monday afternoon football. But me and Jordan, Chicago Bears, were playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. And there was an incident between one of our linebackers who just got promoted from practice squad to active roster, where he made a play, started running towards the Pittsburgh Steelers sideline, and bumped into a referee, and the referee threw a flag for unsportsmanlike conduct and taunting of that player. And if you watch it in slow motion, and if you're connected to the NFL on social media, I'm sure you've already seen it by now, the ref actually leaned into the player to cause the contact to happen. And while he was leaning in, was already reaching for his flag. So we already, as football fans, are not the biggest fans of zebras or referees, as they're officially known. That was uncalled for, Jordan. To put yourself in a situation, I'm talking more for the ref, where you're compromising a player who, in my opinion, watching the play, was not doing a whole lot to warrant a penalty in the first place. And then second of all, I mean, you're really disempowering someone who in another environment would annihilate you physically. So it was just kind of a puzzling, what are you doing situation? And I really hope the NFL cracks down on the referee like they inevitably would to a player who did the same thing to a ref.
Yeah, I think that's the key point, right? If a player does that, like kind of sticks out the hip as an official walks by or jogs by, like
Done.
There'd be hell to pay, right? And so I think it's got to be the same standard held the other way there. It was doozies of calls throughout that game, some hits on Justin Fields that should have been flagged for sure. The taunting call, you had a couple of others that impacted that game. Yeah, it was the Bears need all the help they can get, man. And so when you're having to overcome some of these flags, it's not always a good thing. But
real quick on taunting,
I'm pretty stoked on Justin Fields. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm stoked on Fields. But real quick on taunting across the NFL, even bleeding over into the NBA a little bit too. I understand they're trying to make it a really high-end sportsmanship first environment, but they're demasculinating the sport. And I really believe that. There is nothing wrong. For those listening that have played sports before, there's nothing wrong with getting down and dirty and letting someone know that, hey, you got the best of them in that situation. And sure, there's always a line, and maybe the line is crossed a few times, but let the players play with passion. That's what fuels them. That's why they go out there and play. And in a sport like football that requires so much physicality and brute strength and literally conquering another human being, it's going to get a little dicey. That's just the way it goes. I'm not going to be able to tackle someone or throw a touchdown, get hit to the floor, and then get up and shake the guy's hand in a political fashion. It's just not the case. Am I wrong, Jordan?
No, I think sport is emotion, right?
Yes.
It is impossible to play sport without emotion, and football is more so than any other sport.
Yes.
I think filled with emotion. Like, you have to be a little nuts to run around and put your body on the line, and then to expect guys to do that in that state of mind, and then all of a sudden like turn off the emotion switch or something.
Impossible.
I agree. It's a bit asinine and really impossible when you boil it down. And so, yeah, I'm with you there. They've gone a little too far here, and I think we want to see guys make plays. We want to see guys be able to emote after making big plays. Like, that's I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I don't think there was anything wrong with what Marsh did. That's for sure as well. All right, I'll transition out of this. I just wanted to make a mention. It is a huge week for University of Hawaii sports. Like, it is as action-packed as we will get. Some of the headliners, obviously, men's basketball getting started. This debuts on Thursday, so they'll have already played their opener against Hilo. Wahine basketball opened with a loss on the road to University of San Diego on Tuesday night. They've got USC coming up on Friday. You've got men's hoops in the Rainbow Classic here on the island. Wednesday, Thursday, Wahine volleyball Friday at the Stan Sheriff Center. Football Saturday morning. Obviously, that's in Vegas, but you got men's basketball again Saturday night, and then Wahine volleyball on Sunday back at the Stan Sheriff Center. So now that these events are open, if you want to just go ahead and, make your reservations at Stan Sheriff, you can watch games Wednesday through Sunday if you want with the men's basketball and Wahine volleyball programs. And I think that's pretty exciting and pretty cool, particularly if you think of how long we went without any sports of any kind happening on that campus in Manoa. So just wanted to kind of make a mention of that. You can catch the action, a lot of it right here on ESPN Honolulu and our family of networks. And then, of course, if you can go check it out in person as well, which will be pretty cool. So that'll do it for us. We will be back with you next week, recapping what is hopefully a Hawaii win on the continent against UNLV as we head into the final few weeks of the regular season in this 2021 campaign. Again, this has been Hawai'i Football Now. Big mahalos to Xanthison, Spectrum Mobile as well. You can hit me up on Twitter at Jordan Helle. You can hit up Hunter at allaroundath as well. We'll see you next week, everybody.
You've been listening to Hawai'i Football Now with Jordan Helle and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.